Every person walking this earth carries two silent companions, fear and doubt. They walk beside us from the moment we dare to dream. They whisper in our ear, telling us what we cannot do, what is too risky, what might fail. And yet, those who rise above average are not the ones born without fear. They are the ones who have learned to train the mind to master it. Fear is not the enemy. It is a signal, an alarm that something valuable lies ahead. Every worthwhile pursuit in life begins just beyond the line of fear. The mind, however, must be taught this truth, because an untrained mind sees fear as a stop sign. A trained mind sees it as an invitation to grow. Doubt, too, is a clever thief. It robs us of opportunity before we even begin. It tells us we are not ready, not capable, not worthy. But here is the truth: you become capable by acting, not by waiting for certainty. The most confident people you know were once uncertain too. They just refused to let doubt decide their future. To train the mind means to take control of the conversation happening inside you. Every day, you are talking to yourself. Question is, what are you saying? The average person allows fear to run the dialogue. What if I fail? What will they think? What if it doesn't work? But the trained mind asks, what if I succeed? What will I learn? How strong will I become? Fear and doubt live in the imagination. They feed on what is unseen and unproven. That's why clarity is power. When your goals are clear, fear loses its shape. When your actions are consistent, doubt loses its strength. A clear purpose turns the fog of uncertainty into a path of direction. Every time you act in spite of fear, you train your mind a little more. Every time you move forward despite the noise of doubt, you build strength. Courage is not an emotion. It is a decision repeated until it becomes habit. The people who live boldly are not fearless. They are simply trained. To overcome fear and doubt, you must commit to mental discipline. Guard your thoughts like a gatekeeper guards a city. Feed your mind with faith, knowledge, and vision. Refuse to give energy to negativity or worry. You cannot stop fear from knocking, but you can refuse to open the door. Success begins and ends in the mind. Once you win the battle there, the outside world must follow. Train your thoughts to serve your goals, not sabotage them. Direct your attention to possibility, not limitation. You are stronger than the emotion you feel, wiser than the doubts that visit, and far greater than you yet realize. Train your mind, and watch how the world begins to change with it. The greatest battle any person will ever face is not in the world outside, but within the mind. Every moment, your thoughts are shaping your future, determining your courage and defining your limits. To train your mind to overcome fear and doubt is to rise above the noise of the average, to take command of the one thing that governs every result you will ever create. The mind is the control center of all human experience. It is the birthplace of both victory and defeat. Fear and doubt are like weeds. If you do not consciously remove them, they grow wild and choke the life out of your dreams. Most people let their fears dictate their decisions and their doubts define their destiny. But the truth is, fear and doubt only have the power you give them. When you learn to observe your thoughts without obeying them, you begin to see that fear is just a story and doubt is just hesitation wearing the mask of logic. The mind is a servant, but for most, it becomes the master. It tells them what they can't do, and they listen. The difference between the ordinary and the extraordinary lies in awareness, the ability to step back and realize that every limiting belief is self-created and self-maintained. The process of training the mind begins with understanding its habits. Every fear you feel has been rehearsed. Every doubt you carry has been repeated. You have practiced insecurity so long that it has become instinct. But habits can be rewritten. Every time you face something uncomfortable and still move forward, you rewire your mind for courage. Every time you silence that inner critic and choose action over hesitation, you build strength in the muscle of belief. The mind learns through repetition, and what you repeat, you become. So if you feed it daily with thoughts of power, faith, and certainty, it will begin to reflect that reality in everything you do. The goal is not to eliminate fear. It is to operate despite it. Because courage is not the absence of fear. It is the mastery of it. Fear thrives in uncertainty, in the gaps between where you are and where you want to be. It feeds on what you cannot see. That is why clarity is the greatest weapon against fear. When you have a clear purpose, the mind no longer has room for doubt. Purpose gives you direction, and direction gives you peace. When your goal becomes greater than your fear, fear dissolves. The trained mind is focused on vision, not hesitation. It replaces what if I fail with what if I grow. It understands that fear is a sign of something meaningful, a signal that you are stepping into territory that matters. Every time you step into the unknown and keep walking, your mind learns that the unknown is not dangerous. It is opportunity, and disguised doubt is another illusion of the untrained mind. It is the voice that questions your readiness, your worthiness, your ability. But no one is ever fully ready, and every person who achieved greatness began in uncertainty. The difference is that they acted anyway. They used their doubts as fuel instead of chains. The trained mind does not seek perfection before beginning, it seeks progress through movement. Action kills doubt faster than reasoning ever will. Because once you move, your focus shifts from fear to experience. You learn, you adapt, and the doubt that once held you begins to fade. To train your mind is to become your own master, to refuse to surrender your potential to emotion. You cannot stop fear from visiting, but you can stop it from staying. You cannot silence doubt forever, but you can choose not to feed it. Every thought, every decision, every action becomes a form of training. The more you discipline your focus, the stronger you become. You will reach a point where fear still appears, but it no longer controls you. Doubt still whispers, but it no longer delays you. The world outside will always test your strength, but once you have trained your mind, no test can defeat you. Every human being possesses an incredible instrument capable of shaping destiny, and that instrument is the mind. Yet most people live as prisoners within it, confined by fear and doubt that were never truly theirs to begin with. These emotions were learned, absorbed from failure, from rejection, from the opinions of others, and from the mistakes that left a scar. Over time, the mind begins to build walls, subtle defenses meant to protect you, but in reality they imprison you. The mind says, be careful, don't risk too much, don't dream too high, because it fears the pain of disappointment. But the truth is that safety is an illusion, and the greatest danger of all is never realizing what you are capable of because you listen to fear instead of faith. The training of the mind begins when you stop treating fear as an enemy and start understanding it as a teacher. Fear reveals where your limits are imagined. It shows you where your comfort zone ends and growth begins. Those who learn to interpret fear correctly begin to transform it into fuel, into direction, into focus to overcome fear and doubt. One must develop mental discipline, the ability to hold steady in moments of uncertainty. The undisciplined mind reacts to every feeling. It swings like a pendulum between hope and hesitation. One moment, you believe in your potential, the next you question everything. The disciplined mind, however, observes emotions without being controlled by them. It does not let temporary feelings decide long-term outcomes. This training does not happen overnight. It is built through repetition, through consistent practice of awareness and control. Each time you feel fear rising, take a breath, step back, and choose thought over reaction. The moment you observe your fear instead of obeying it, you begin to win the inner battle. The same goes for doubt. Doubt loses its grip the moment you take action. The mind cannot hold fear and focus at the same time. Once you decide to act, energy flows where attention goes, and doubt no longer has space to live. A powerful truth to understand is that fear and doubt cannot survive in the presence of clarity. When your goals are clear and your reasons are strong, the mind has no room for hesitation. Clarity acts as light in darkness. It reveals what is real and exposes what is false. The trained mind keeps its attention fixed on what it wants to create, not on what it wants to avoid. It sees fear not as a wall, but as a compass pointing toward something meaningful. The moment you feel resistance, it is often the mind's way of saying, here lies your next level. But most people retreat thinking discomfort means danger when in fact it means direction. To train the mind, you must learn to stay centered when that discomfort appears. Instead of running from it, lean in. Ask what it is trying to teach you. Every fear faced and every doubt overcome becomes a step toward mastery. You must also learn to control the mental diet you feed your thoughts. The mind reflects whatever it consumes. If you fill it daily with fear-based information, negative talk, and self-criticism, it will grow weak. But if you fill it with knowledge, purpose, and gratitude, it becomes strong. Every word you say to yourself is an instruction to the subconscious. The trained mind never speaks defeat. It replaces, I can't, with, I'm learning. I'm afraid, with, I'm not ready, with, I'm becoming. These small shifts in language create enormous shifts in behavior. Because the mind believes what it hears most often, and what it believes it becomes. The person who trains their mind learns that fear and doubt are not obstacles. They are opportunities in disguise. They are signals that something greater is waiting just beyond the threshold of hesitation. Every challenge you face is a test of mastery, every risk an invitation to grow. You do not need to eliminate fear to succeed. You only need to act despite it. The moment you decide to move forward, the spell is broken, and the mind begins to work for you instead of against you. That is the quiet power of a trained mind. It transforms every limitation into possibility, every uncertainty into purpose, every doubt into determination. The mind is the architect of destiny, shaping everything you experience, every outcome you create, and every limit you believe exists. To train the mind to overcome fear and doubt is to take control of the foundation upon which your entire life is built. Fear and doubt are not born with you. They are learned through experience, inherited through the opinions of others, and strengthened through repetition. The untrained mind absorbs fear like a sponge absorbs water. It takes in everything around it without discrimination. The trained mind, however, becomes selective. It learns to separate what is real from what is imagined, what is possible from what is merely perceived. Because most of the fear we feel is not about the present. It is about the unknown. It is the mind's way of trying to protect you from a future it cannot predict. But growth demands that you step into the unknown. And that is where mental strength must replace mental comfort. The first step in mastering fear and doubt is awareness. You cannot change what you do not see. Begin by noticing the thoughts that dominate your inner dialogue. When fear arises, do not fight it. Observe it. Ask what it is trying to protect you from. When doubt appears, do not bury it. Question it. Ask whether it is based on truth or on habit. The act of observing your thoughts separates you from them. It gives you power over the automatic patterns that once controlled you. You begin to see that fear is not a signal to stop, but a reminder that something valuable lies beyond. Every successful person has felt fear. The difference is that they refused to let it define their limits. They saw it as information, not instruction. The trained mind uses fear as feedback, as data to prepare and strengthen itself rather than as a reason to retreat. Doubt, on the other hand, is the quieter of the two enemies. It does not scream, it whispers. It plants small seeds of hesitation that grow over time into paralysis. Doubt makes you question your timing, your talent, and your worth. But the truth is, no one begins fully confident. Confidence is not a prerequisite for action. It is a result of action. Every time you move forward in spite of doubt, you teach your mind a new rule. That progress matters more than perfection. The trained mind understands that waiting for certainty is another form of delay. You act first and belief catches up later. This is how warriors of the mind operate. They do not eliminate fear or doubt. They outgrow them through repeated exposure. To challenge mental training also means choosing the right environment for your thoughts to thrive. The mind mirrors what it is surrounded by. If you spend your days among people who feed fear, your mind will echo it. If you surround yourself with growth, discipline, and positivity, your mind will adapt to that vibration. The trained mind filters its influences. It protects its focus the way a gardener protects soil from weeds. It avoids unnecessary noise, gossip, or negativity because it knows that every input shapes an internal reality. To master the mind, you must master what enters it. Another key to overcoming fear and doubt is vision. When you have a powerful purpose, it becomes difficult for fear to control you. Vision provides direction, and direction creates strength. When you know why you are moving forward, the obstacles lose their authority. A trained mind locks its focus on the goal, not the resistance. It reminds itself that every challenge is temporary, but growth is permanent. Each time you face fear and move anyway, you earn trust in yourself. That trust becomes confidence, and confidence becomes momentum. Over time, you begin to realize that fear and doubt were never external forces. They were simply reflections of an untrained mind learning to trust its own power. Training your mind is not a one-time act. It is a daily discipline. It is the art of replacing reaction with response, emotion with awareness, and hesitation with movement. Every moment you choose focus over fear, clarity over confusion, and persistence over paralysis, you rewire your subconscious. You turn mental weakness into mental mastery. And when the mind is trained, life bends to its command. The mind is both your greatest ally and your greatest obstacle, depending on how you train it. Within it exists the power to create worlds or destroy them, to build courage or to feed fear. Fear and doubt are not permanent forces. They are temporary visitors that only stay as long as you entertain them. They begin as thoughts, become feelings, and then evolve into habits. Once the mind becomes accustomed to hesitation, it begins to see danger where none exists. It starts predicting failure even before effort is made. To overcome this cycle, you must become the conscious commander of your thoughts, the one who decides what stays and what leaves. Training your mind means no longer being a passive participant in your thinking, but becoming the director of your inner dialogue. Because what you repeat to yourself becomes the blueprint of your behavior. Every day the mind receives countless signals from the world, opinions, fears, comparisons, and doubts from others. If you do not filter them, they start shaping your reality. The untrained mind absorbs everything. The trained mind selects only what serves growth. When you hear the voice of fear saying, "You are not ready, you might fail, you cannot do this," pause and recognize it as an echo, not truth. It is the mind's way of preserving what is known, not protecting what is possible. The trained mind sees fear as resistance and uses it as a signpost that progress is near. Wherever fear stands, opportunity hides behind it. Every step forward in the presence of fear strengthens the inner muscle of courage. With each act of defiance against doubt, your confidence expands, and what once terrified you begins to feel ordinary. The most effective way to train the mind is through conscious repetition. Thoughts are like pathways. The more you travel one, the deeper it becomes. If you constantly think fearful thoughts, that path becomes your default route. To change it, you must build a new one by consistently feeding your mind empowering, decisive and clear messages. Say to yourself daily, I can handle this, I am prepared, I will find a way. Speak these words until they become automatic. The subconscious listens to repetition far more than logic. Over time, the mind begins to believe what it hears most often. This is how you replace doubt with certainty, hesitation with strength. Training the mind is not about pretending fear does not exist. It is about programming the response that follows. The untrained mind reacts. The trained mind responds. Fear also thrives in confusion. When you are unclear about your goals, the mind creates stories of danger. Clarity cuts through that fog. A clear goal gives the mind direction and removes the room for unnecessary worry. When you know where you are going and why it matters, fear loses its leverage. The trained mind always returns to purpose. It asks, why am I doing this? What do I want to achieve? And how will this decision move me forward? By refocusing on vision, it pulls energy away from fear and channels it into action. Doubt cannot survive in the presence of momentum. The moment you begin moving, thinking becomes secondary, and confidence begins to grow through experience. Movement proves to the mind that progress is possible. Every action, no matter how small, reaffirms control. Another essential part of mental training is awareness of your environment. Surroundings influence thought patterns more than most realize. Spend enough time around fear-driven people and your mind will echo their uncertainty. Spend time around those who live with focus, resilience, and calm, and your mind will mirror their strength. Guard your energy. The trained mind does not expose itself to constant negativity. It protects its peace because it knows peace is power. When the mind is calm, it sees clearly. When it is scattered, it magnifies problems. The stronger your inner focus, the less influence the external world has over you. To train your mind to overcome fear and doubt is to take responsibility for your inner world. It is to realize that no external event, no opinion, and no setback can define you unless you allow it. The trained mind understands that fear is temporary, that doubt is natural, and that both dissolve when faced with sustained action. Each moment you choose awareness over reaction, purpose over panic, and movement over hesitation, you sharpen your mental edge. Over time, that edge becomes unbreakable. Fear becomes guidance, doubt becomes growth, and the mind becomes the most powerful instrument of transformation you will ever possess. The training of the mind is the most important discipline a person can ever undertake because the quality of your thinking determines the quality of your life. Fear and doubt are the two barriers that keep most people from discovering their real potential. They are subtle, persistent, and convincing. They whisper in moments of decision. They rise when opportunity appears, and they create hesitation just long enough for the chance to pass. But fear and doubt are not external forces. They are internal creations. They live in the imagination and feed on uncertainty. To overcome them, one must learn to take control of thought, to direct attention with precision, and to train the mind to see truth instead of illusion. When you understand that fear exists only in the future and doubt exists only in memory, you begin to free yourself from both. Fear is the anticipation of loss. Doubt is the memory of failure. But the present moment is beyond their reach. A mind trained for strength lives in the present. It does not allow what has not happened or what has already passed to influence its focus. It uses the past as instruction, not imprisonment, and it uses the future as inspiration, not anxiety. This kind of mind is built through discipline. It is built by practicing calmness when chaos arrives, patience when results are delayed, and faith when answers are unseen. Every moment you remain still in the face of fear, you train the mind to trust itself. Every time you choose movement despite uncertainty, you remind your mind that progress is more powerful than perfection. Doubt cannot exist in a mind that values learning over approval. The more you grow, the less you need validation. And as that need fades, doubt begins to disappear with it. One of the greatest shifts happens when you stop asking, what if I fail, and begin asking, what if I succeed? The untrained mind automatically focuses on danger. The trained mind focuses on opportunity. It looks at the same situation but sees possibility instead of risk. This is not blind optimism. It is mental awareness. It is the recognition that thoughts create direction. Whatever the mind focuses on expands, and whatever it ignores begins to fade. The more you dwell on fear, the more power you give it. The more you direct your energy toward purpose, the smaller fear becomes. Training your mind is about mastering focus, teaching it to hold attention on what builds you instead of what breaks you. Because the truth is, fear loses its strength the moment it meets focus. You cannot be both afraid and fully concentrated. The energy cannot occupy both states at once. To strengthen the mind against doubt, action is the key. The mind believes what it experiences, not what it merely thinks. Each time you act, you prove to yourself that doubt was mistaken. This creates evidence, and evidence builds confidence. Action is the bridge between uncertainty and belief. It transforms theory into truth. That is why successful people do not wait for confidence to begin. They begin, and confidence arrives as a result. The mind learns through motion. When you take one step toward courage, the next step becomes easier. Soon fear becomes a challenge instead of a limitation. You start to welcome it as a test rather than a threat. The trained mind interprets discomfort as a sign of expansion, not danger. It understands that pressure is proof that growth is taking place. To live without being ruled by fear or doubt requires daily conditioning. It is not enough to read inspiring words once. They must be repeated, internalized, and lived. The mind must be fed with strength every day, just as the body is fed with food. Affirmations, reflection, gratitude, and silence are all forms of mental training. They remind the mind of control, direction, and peace. When practiced consistently, these habits build an inner foundation that no fear can shake. You begin to operate from purpose instead of reaction, from calmness instead of confusion. A trained mind sees fear as temporary noise, doubt as passing weather, and both as signs that it is on the right path, because fear only appears where growth is possible, and doubt only visits where potential is unfolding. The person who understands this no longer runs from them. They rise above them, guided by a mind that has learned to master itself. There comes a point in every person's journey when they must decide whether they will be ruled by the emotions that weaken them, or by the discipline that strengthens them. Fear and doubt are the most persuasive emotions the mind can produce because they disguise themselves as logic. They convince you that hesitation is wisdom, that safety is strategy, and that waiting for the perfect time is preparation. But these are lies created by an untrained mind trying to protect you from growth. The mind's first instinct is always survival, not success. It prefers what is familiar, even if it keeps you small, because the unknown feels unsafe. To train your mind to overcome fear and doubt is to retrain this instinct, to teach your mind that discomfort does not mean danger, that risk does not mean recklessness, and that moving forward without certainty is the only path to confidence. Every step taken in the presence of fear strengthens the inner voice that says, "I can handle this." Every step avoided weakens it. What you repeatedly choose becomes what you ultimately believe. The untrained mind listens to fear, the trained mind listens to direction. It has learned that fear only has one purpose: to test the strength of your commitment. It asks, do you really want this? Are you willing to pay the price of growth? The moment you answer with action instead of retreat, fear loses its power. Doubt is the second challenge. It hides beneath thoughts that seem reasonable. It tells you to wait until you know more, until you feel ready, until the path is clear. But readiness is an illusion. You become ready by moving, by learning through doing, by proving to yourself that progress matters more than perfection. The mind becomes stronger only through exposure to difficulty, just as the body becomes stronger only through resistance. Each time you face uncertainty and continue forward, you build mental endurance. Soon fear becomes quieter, doubt becomes smaller, and confidence becomes natural. The process of training the mind requires attention. You cannot allow thoughts to wander without direction and expect strength to appear. The mind is like a garden. It grows whatever you plant. If you plant fear-based thoughts, you will harvest hesitation. If you plant thoughts of clarity, purpose, and persistence, you will harvest peace and power. Training begins by watching your thoughts with awareness, noticing when fear begins to speak, and choosing not to accept its message as truth. It continues by replacing that message with one that serves your goal. Instead of saying, "I can't," you say, "I'm learning." Instead of saying, "This is too big," you say, "I am becoming stronger." These small internal corrections reshape the subconscious. Over time, the mind learns a new pattern of response. It begins to associate fear with challenge rather than threat. That shift alone changes everything. When fear arises, act. When doubt whispers, decide, because action is the enemy of both. You cannot think your way out of fear. You can only move your way through it. Once you act, the mind adjusts. It realizes the imagined threat was never real. Fear exists before action. Confidence exists after it. The difference between those who achieve and those who dream lies not in talent, but in response. The achievers train their minds to move first and think later. They trust that clarity will come after motion. This conditioning transforms hesitation into habit and courage into character. The mind, once trained, no longer seeks comfort. It seeks challenge because it knows that every challenge leads to expansion. The final stage of mastery is awareness of control. You begin to realize that nothing external truly holds power over your emotions. Fear is an internal signal, not an external force. Doubt is an inner echo, not a fact. The trained mind refuses to give control to anything outside itself. It maintains calm when others panic, focus when others freeze, and belief when others break. This level of self-mastery is not built overnight. It is built through daily choices. Every moment you choose focus over fear, faith over hesitation, and effort over excuses, you add another layer of strength. Eventually, the mind becomes disciplined enough to remain unshaken by uncertainty. Fear becomes background noise, doubt becomes a passing shadow, and you continue forward with quiet conviction. The person who has trained their mind in this way becomes unstoppable. not because fear has disappeared, but because it no longer decides the outcome.